on Curb. When it came toward the part where Ted and I got a divorce, we literally had people calling us and going, "Say it isn't so." And I went, "No, it's real. We decided to get a divorce, and what better way to announce it to the world than Curb Your Enthusiasm?"
When Larry came to you guys and said, I'm going to have your characters divorce on the show, did you push back on that at all?
I found out about it real late in the game, and it was a pain in the butt. People are like, "Why are you guys doing this?" Or, "Why are you allowing this?" Anyway, thanks a lot, Lair.
Hello and welcome to Obsessed, the podcast. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast, and today on the show, I am so excited to be joined by an Oscar-winning actress who you may know from movies like Parenthood, Elf, and Step Brothers, just to name a few of my favorites, and TV shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm and A Man on the Inside. She plays a fierce pickleball player in her latest movie, The Dink, which premieres on Apple TV on Friday, July 24th. Mary Steenburgen, welcome to Obsess, the podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I want to jump right into this new movie, The Dink, which I just got to see and thought was so much fun. Were you a pickleball enthusiast before taking on this role?
Just before. My son, Charlie McDowell, gave me a paddle about 2 months before we started shooting and said that, "I'll give you lessons. You've gotta try this because I think you'd be good at it, and I think you'd like it." And, I'd never played tennis or any other racket sport particularly, or paddle sport. But, I fell in love with it right away, and then miraculously, 2 months into it, my literal dream job in every way falls into my lap.
What made this one such a dream job beyond getting to play your new favorite sport?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you. I got to sleep in my own bed at night because it's shot in LA. It's a comedy. It's produced by Ben Stiller. It's starring Jake Johnson, and we're the leads in it. Josh Greenbaum is directing, and it's about pickleball.
It's
There's,
pretty
like,
good.
not one of those things that doesn't thrill me, so put them all together, I had to do it.
So I have heard you refer to this movie as a rom-com, and I will admit that I spent the first half of the movie trying to figure out if it was going to get romantic between you and Jake Johnson's characters. We should note that Jake Johnson in real life is 25 years younger than you are. I'm curious if you had the same experience when you read it. Were you reading it thinking, is this where this is going? Is this what's going to happen here?
Well, I don't know if we should do spoilers
Yeah,
or
we don't need to spoil where it ends up, but there are hints.
I will say that, that this was a much debated, question, and, I I kn they say that when they cast me, then they got more, uh they just kept playing with the ending and go, "Wait, it should it be this? Should it be this?"
Hmm.
I happen to think it's perfect the way it is, and I'm glad it's the way it is. And, so, but it's an interesting thing because it's quite a unique relationship in film. If you try to compare it to anything similar, it kind of is hard to think of, at least it has been for me. I mean, it's not Harold and Maude, but that's kind of the only thing people have mentioned, but that doesn't really apply. It's just, it's a unique it's a unique relationship in a very fun and unique film.
Yeah, I do think there was a hint, which is that they're watching The Graduate together at some point, but it's not that either, right?
No, I mean, I think Candace was gonna watch it by herself, and he kinda crashed her popcorn being alone evening, and she wasn't even that choked up about it, but yeah, it was, yeah, It's just a unique relationship. What can I say?
Yeah, it definitely takes some unexpected turns, and we won't spoil where it ends up, but I do wonder if you thought that you would be the co-lead star of a rom-com at 73. Is that something that you sort of saw for yourself?
You know what? I was telling someone the other day that, I knew Roddy McDowall really well. He was a very dear friend of mine, not to be confused with my ex-husband and friend, Malcolm McDowell. But Roddy was a very dear friend, and he had these crazy dinner parties where he would invite legends, Johnny Depp might be seated next to Louise Rainier, and, uh, Liz Taylor was there a million times, and, Betty Davis, and so I got to know all these people that were generations ahead of me, um, 99% of whom were huge legends. And there was a thing amongst those women, and some of them were not that old. Some of them, uh, were gorgeous and still young, and they talked about how they were offered nothing. And so I being a young woman in my 20s and early 30s, I just thought that's my future. I mean, if, Lee Remick, who's so brilliant and gorgeous and still so drop dead gorgeous, is saying this is hard. I What chance do I have? And so when you ask me the question, did I picture rom-com? I didn't even imagine I'd be working. So,
Really?
because I think it's not so much any changes in me or what I've done. I think the business has gotten, in some ways, kinder to women, and so you see, performances by women my age, and older that are vibrant and lovely and funny and fun, and it's thrilling, and, so I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
Yeah, it must be so gratifying to be the lead of a movie, and I think you had that experience, as a co-lead in the book club movies, or another example of that, where it was, a group of women, who could lead the movie and show that people would show up, which is also, important.
But by the way, I think it's okay to do a rom-com starring me.
I so do I. I think this one definitely qualifies, even if it's a little, as we said, it gets a little complicated. But yeah, no, I think it totally makes sense, and it shows how it does show how the business has changed. Because I don't think, this kind of movie would have been made, 20 years ago or whatever. And I think, also looking back at your resume, you've you have played a lot of moms. I think starting you going all the way back to Parenthood, when you were, much younger.
Before that, I was a mom. I was a mom in my 3rd film. I had what looked to be about a 12-year-old daughter, and let me think, I would have been about 26 then. So, do that math. I played Will Ferrell's mom, and I would have had to have had him when I was 11.
Yeah, right. You've had the pleasure of playing Will Ferrell's mom and or stepmom twice at this point. The first one, I believe you're his stepmom in Elf. I was wondering if you caught any of this. Will was just on Michelle Obama's podcast, and Michelle Obama said that this is her most rewatched favorite movie ever.
All the time, she said. I was, someone sent it to me, and I was like a little kid screaming and yelling around the house. Yeah, that was an honor.
This week's episode is sponsored by Wildmen with Dylan Sprouse and Brendan Columbus. It's a new casual video podcast hang in a basement bar where Dylan and Brendan invite you into their group chat. The two have been best friends since college and have spent years roasting each other, arguing over everything, and somehow staying incredibly close through it all. Now, with Dylan getting ready to become a dad and Brendan planning his wedding, they've got even more to joke about and absolutely no patience for each other's nonsense. Every episode feels like you're sitting in a room with lifelong friends as they swap stories and riff on everything from pop culture to Pokemon cards, D&D, and comics, and bring on friends like Barbara Palvin, Cole Sprouse, KJ Appa, Jojo Siwa, Raven Simone, and more. Because so many of the guests are people they actually know, the conversations are relaxed, funny, and feel a lot more real than your typical celebrity interview. Check out Wildmen with Dylan Sprouse and Brendan Columbus starting July 14th on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
He also, Will, in that interview, I believe, said something that he said before, which is that he thought when he made that movie, it was his first big, leading role out of SNL, and he thought it might kill his career just based on the outfit that he was wearing, and that he didn't know whether it was going to work. So I'm wondering, when you were on set, maybe the first day, seeing him in that outfit, what was going through your mind? Were you like, this is going to be a Hollywood classic that Christmas people watch at Christmas every year? Or what was your first impressions?
I literally remember the moment. I remember coming onto the set, and our first scene was the scene at the table the first night he has dinner with us, when he's telling us about coming from the land of the whirly twirly gumdrops. And he had already shot a little bit that day, so he was already dressed like Buddy. And it's a funny thing because now you could, you could just do a little cartoon of the shape of that character and you would know who that was. But this was a moment where no one had seen it before. And I'm looking at Will Ferrell, who I adore from SNL and everything, in this elf costume. And I could not stop laughing. And then we have to go shoot this scene. And it was just like, Mary, come on, it's your first day's work. They're gonna fire you if you don't get it together, you know? It was so hard not to laugh. And also, I think it was at that moment that I thought, "Oh my god, if we pull this off, this is gonna be magic," because what little kid is n and what old kid is not gonna wanna see this? It's too delicious. And, to their credit, they could have just it could have just been a dumb, silly movie, but Jon Favreau had such um he understood the tone of what was possible to make a Christmas classic with that character, and Will was so brilliant in it, and it 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 could have been something that we would have all forgotten, but it isn't because of the heart of it, and the sweetness of it, and the nostalgia of it, and the imagination of it, and it just, they were brilliant in every way in the choices they made.
I think that you deserve a lot of credit for that as well, in terms of grounding the comedy in this, heart and sweetness, and playing it as real and reacting to it real. And I think it's the same can be said of Step Brothers, which is a lot of ways, even though it's not fantasy in the same way, it's even more outrageous what you're having to react to. And I know you've said you had trouble holding it together and not laughing on that set as well. Um, I was rewatching some of the scenes of yours from Step Brothers, and you can definitely see that you're, smiling and laughing a little bit in reaction. But I kind of think it works because it shows that you find this, son of yours endearing in some way, even if he's so insane and outrageous, because there has to be that element of it, right? That
Well,
he
she loves him. She loves him so much, I think she loves both of her sons, but um, I'm I'm I do think she has a favorite. Sorry, Adam.
yeah, Adam Scott's, character is even worse, yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you think about that at all? Like, can I use the laughing within the scene to make this work?
A better actor than me would have thought that. I just was constantly going, "Please don't laugh right now. Please hold it together. Please focus. Please," and the problem was, you could look at the script and you could see the things that might be triggers for a giggler like me. You could sort of prepare for those. The problem was that in the mornings, we would do that, and then you'd have lunch, and you'd get a little tired and a little punchy, and in the afternoons, we would improvise a lot, all of us, and you would mine things that had been like little snippets of things we had found in the morning, and that's very similar in some ways to how the Dink was, although the Dink, we could have just shot the script easily with no improv, and it would have been perfect, but the improv had this energy that's fun, and that's the problem is you don't know what's coming. It's like laugh missiles are coming at you from both John and Will. They're, like, firing at you, and of course, it's hard, you know? Poor me.
Do you remember whether it's from Step Brothers or The Dink or something, a moment of improv that was just so unexpected that then made it into the film and kind of became something that connected?
When we're at the Catalina wine mixer and, his psychiatrist/girlfriend says something about how it's never gonna be I'm never ever gonna be or some little thing, and I remember saying, "You're a keeper," and and it just came out, and then everybody started giggling, and it landed in the movie, and then it's not my improv, but when in the scene where they're having an enormous fight in the front yard and hitting each other with bicycles and everything else imaginable. I won't say what I say because I don't necessarily know if my grandchildren will be watching this show, but I definitely, um, y you know, drop some major F-bombs there, and that's with, Adam McKay screaming at me through a megaphone. Why was he using a megaphone? Because he had such a booming laugh, and he laughed so hard at everything that was happening. They kept moving him further and further down the street. And so when he wanted to direct us, he had to use a megaphone because he was destroying all the takes with his laughter. But he loved having Nancy, my character, use obscenities. That was his idea of hilarious.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a little bit of him trying to get you to play against type because I do feel like you have a reputation for being very, like, wholesome and sweet and
You
kind.
know what? I'm not that sweet, but I'm just drawn that way.
Yeah, do you feel like you've been pushed into that? With any actor, you get kind of pigeonholed or have a type.
I have no complaints. I've done what I've wanted to do and not done what I didn't wanna do. You know, I probably made one big mistake in my career of something I didn't do that I probably should have done, but I'll never tell anyone what it was.
You'll never tell? That's one of my questions I like to ask, is what's the thing that you turned down that you wish you hadn't?
Someone else did it, and I wouldn't do that to her. So,
Yeah. Was it Andy McDowell?
no.
Because I know the two of you have a thing with Andy McDowell, right?
I don't have a thing with her. My son has a thing with wishing she were his mother, because her last name is McDowell and his last name is McDowell, and I'm just over here being Steenburgen.
And he likes to post on, is it your birthday that he posts on?
He does it on Mother's Day. He says, "Happy Mother's Day to my, beautiful, loving, amazing mother," and then there's a picture of Andy McDowell, and she's played along with him. I think they've tapered off a little bit, but I hope this interview doesn't rev him.
So the other project that I know involves a lot of improv that I wanted to ask you about is Curb Your Enthusiasm. I believe you did 6 episodes of that show, but over the course of 17 years, which is kind of amazing.
Oh, I didn't know either of those facts.
Yeah, and if you were in the second episode of the first season, with your husband, Ted Danson, playing yourselves. I'm curious how that happened. Were you and Ted friends with Larry in real life, and that's why he asked you to do it?
Yes, we were friends, we spent a lot of time together on Martha's Vineyard. Uh, I I I think he's wonderful. I saw him the other day. I was doing some looping, on a sound stage, and I feel someone tap me on the shoulder, and it was Larry who heard I was in the building, and so it was cool to see him. Yeah, we were just friends, and he was doing this show, and he pulled in a lot of his buddies, and, we had no idea if we were doing something that would even see the light of day. And then we saw some of it, not we weren't in it. It was the first episode, the pilot that we saw, and, it was like, "Oh my gosh, she's probably now gonna be an actor."
Yeah. Was that surprising? You didn't view him that way, I guess, because he had never really acted before.
Well, we didn't think of him that way because he was such a renowned and extraordinary writer and creator of a classic show. So, yeah, suddenly now he's gonna be an actor. It was just so funny and crazy, and the character he played on Curb is really Larry, minus the fact that Larry has a tenderness and a sweetness that he kept, hidden very well.
How did you approach the idea of playing yourself? I don't know if you'd done it in anything before that, but you have to sort of show this world this version of Mary Steenburgen, and people will think that's who you are because that's sort of the nature of that show. Did you think about that at all? This is who I'm portraying to the world?
I didn't take it as seriously as I should have because when it came after many years toward the part where, Ted and I got a divorce, um, we literally had people calling us and going, "Say it isn't so." And I went, "No, it's real. We decided to get a divorce, and what better way to announce it to the world than Curb Your Enthusiasm." And she's like, "Oh, okay, I guess it's not true." No, it's not true.
So when Larry presumably came to you guys and said, "I'm gonna have your characters divorce on the show," did you push back on that at all? Did you think it was funny or
He told Ted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I found out about it real late in the game, and it was a pain in the butt because honestly, people are like, "Why are you guys doing this?" Or, "Why are you allowing this?" Or whatever. So, anyway, thanks a lot, Lair.
Yeah, and then, of course, he has Ted dating his ex-wife on the show, Cheryl, which complicated things even more. What did you think of that storyline? Were you like, "Really? Is that where you're going with this?"
Uh, you know, at that point, I think I just know where Larry's head is at, which is this is a little comic situation I can mine. That's what it was. He had me, um he had me, say to him on the phone, uh, that I'm sorry, just I realize I've said this to a few men lately on screen, that I'm just not physically attracted to you. And then, he sees me walking across the street with an absolute clone of himself. So, that was pretty fun.
You're talking about, telling men on screen that they're not your type. It did make me think of, the story that you've told about your husband, Ted Danson, and getting to know him, and that is it true that you watched Ted on Cheers and thought, "This guy's not my type," specifically?
No, that's not true. I watched Cheers and thought what he is doing and what Shelley is doing on Cheers was so masterful and brilliant and precise and hard to do and funny and, like, perfect ice skating together. I thought it was so, amazing that I couldn't wait to bump into him someday, which I did at a party of Henry Winkler's, and to tell him how much I admired him. The I was married. I didn't have a thought about him romantically. I didn't have a crush on him. I didn't see anything coming my way, and we started working together on a movie many years after we're both divorced, and I'm still just we're friends, and w what I started noticing was when everyone would go out to dinner, but Ted couldn't come, I would experience, like, feeling, "Ah, bummer, that's a shame." And then, it would happen again or something, and I'm like, "Oh, so much more fun when Ted is around." And I think my heart inched, which a heart that had stated right before this that I was sworn off relationships forever, my heart just started inching its way to him. Um, he says his moved a lot faster, but I don't know. I know for me, it began with a friendship, and it began with me, uh, realizing this person was not who I expected him to be. Maybe that's what I said that made you
Mm. Yeah.
because I didn't realize how deep he is. I didn't realize, you know, his background. He was raised with Hopi his 2 best friends, one was Hopi, one was Navajo. The 3 of them would get bareback on horses and ride across the Arizona desert. I mean, his way of looking at the world was influenced particularly by Hopi, experiences and their, beliefs and the time that he spent with them in the villages, and, um, it kind of when you meet his family, it all starts to fall into place. They're a very interesting family, and it was a very exotic childhood considering it's right in the American West, and, so there's lots of things to fall in love with him, and 31 years later, I keep finding new ones.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it kind of goes back to that thing of realizing that people aren't the person that you see on screen, that he's not
And an
Sam Malone, right?
actor should know that, but I kind of didn't.
I really loved, watching the 2 of you together on A Man on the Inside in the 2nd season when you joined that show. Um, I thought it was found it fascinating to watch the 2 of you fall in love, meet each other and fall in love after being married for 30 years, but I'm curious what that was like for you to play that with the man who's been your husband for so long.
It's a really interesting challenge, because we drove to work together that day, um, and, uh, you have to kind of I mean, I think part of it was kind of sense memory of our own beginnings. Uh, I'm part of it was thinking about the differences between my character and his character and how, my brain, um, I once asked an assistant, who I just told her a bunch of different things, and I said, "Am I this is a lot. Am I hard to work for?" And she said, "Well, you are a lesson in mental elasticity." And, and I think Mona is like Mary in that her brain is like this.
Mm.
Music is in the brain. They took that actually, that part of it, Mike Schur took that from my life, and, um, and Charles is an engineer, and he builds things, and he's literal, and life is very simple, and he cuts little interesting articles and sends them to his daughter, and then he takes this job, and it kind of throws everything in his life into disarray and new experiences. So I thought a lot about all that. Um, not so much about Mary and Ted.
Um, we just had W. Kamau Bell, the comedian, on this show a
I
couple weeks
love
ago.
him.
And I'm curious because I talked to him about it. If you had a reaction to that really incredible conversation I thought that he had with Ted about the Friars Club roast and the blackface and Whoopi Goldberg and all the, ancient history that, I had never heard Ted talk about it in that way. And Ted said in that conversation that he mentioned you and said it was really hard for you to understand when you first got together with him, what that was all about. So I'm curious if you listened to that conversation and what you took from it.
I have not yet heard that conversation. I heard Ted's interview with him before, and I've listened to a lot of interviews of his because I admire him very much. Um, I was happy for my husband that they got to have that conversation together because, a choice he made a long time ago, which for him was, uh partly about showing up for someone he cared about, um, and and also trying to make a comment, uh, in a sort of dramatic way about race and about couples that, and I believe, W. Kamau Bell's wife, if I'm not mistaken, is white.
Mhm.
So, uh, he, in many ways, is the perfect person to talk to about what Ted was trying to do, which was, um, uh, to do a piece of theater almost that was a comment on how those 2 people and their relationship was constantly being judged, in terms of black and white. And they had some pretty rough stuff come at them, before that, and then that backfired and did not land the way he was what they were trying to do, and, uh, yes, it was hard for me to understand. It was like, you know, uh, it was confusing, but as I got to know him, uh, I started to understand, um, w how he could do it, simply because he was trying to say what a horrible thing that we judge each other in this way. Um, he says that he will always need to apologize for it. He doesn't think there's a moment where he should stop. Um, and, um, and I leave most of the explanation of it to him. But I was proud of him and I was happy for him.
Yeah.
And it was with one of the most kind of, understanding souls and such a humanist, uh, toward everyone that when you look at all the things that, W. Kamau Bell has done to try to understand the unthinkable, uh, he was just lovely, and I heard every bit of it when Ted came home.
Yeah, well, I definitely encourage everyone listening to this to check that out on W. Kamau Bell's podcast, which is called Who's With Me. Um, so before we end, I want to run through a few of these sort of reflection, bigger picture questions um, pretty quickly. So, what would you go back and tell yourself when you were starting out in this business that you wish you had known?
You know, I did comedy improv in New York when I was young, and, um, we didn't really have a way of having a stage or an audience, so we started with the Bureau of Alcoholism of the city of New York, and we did shows for them, for the halfway houses and stuff. It was just a weird it's all we had. So, we did shows for people in Bedford-Stuy, Harlem, and all kinds of places where there were these AA meetings, you know, places, rehab places, and, in the beginning, I remember very much wanting to be like one of my comedic heroes, Carol Burnett or, Lily Tomlin, and that was a horrible idea because no one can be them, and I quickly learned how wrong that felt deep inside, and so even though I was terrified and felt like I couldn't be funny, I had to keep digging until I found the ways in which I might be funny, and the funny in me, and once I really started digging deep and personalizing it and trying to get to the truth of that, I started noticing that in our shows, I was getting some really big laughs, and they were n they were not sounding like Carol or Lily, I mean, the goddesses, but they were sounding like a girl who'd come to New York from North Little Rock, Arkansas, you know, first job was at Doubleday Bookstore, learned you can't, work here because you get a 33 and a third discount on books, and you're spending all your money on books, so you have to waitress, where you do get a discount on the food, and that's a good thing, so then I became a waitress, That that girl, and she was a girl, she was, like, 19, 20, 21, um, that's who you have to sound like and be like when you're funny, and so that that I've taken with me all along. So if you ask me what I would tell her, besides the fact that I would say, "Someday you're gonna have children, and then blessing on blessing, you're gonna have grandchildren, and you will not believe the love coming your way and that you're gonna feel towards somebody." That I would definitely tell her. But in terms of the acting part of it, I feel like I learned that and I'm continuing to try to remember it, but I never try to sound like anybody but me anymore as that character.
That's good advice. You've already said that you're not gonna tell me what, role you turned down, which I'm dying to know. Is there something that you said yes to at the time that you wish you could go back and say no to?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm not really, though. I mean, I've made really good movies and some of them epically good, but I've also made some turkeys, and I'm glad I did them. I if I really think about each one, I remember why I did it. Or if I can't remember something about that, I met someone there that's still a life friend, and or I learned something there, or my kids and I had an amazing time there, or whatever it is. So, and and I think it's a part of being a working actor. I can't imagine just check, check. Yes, every one of my films was perfect. You know?
Yeah, you have to have the ups and downs.
Yeah, you gotta have it all.
What about a role that got away, something that you auditioned for but didn't get that you maybe still think
I
about?
was talking about this with somebody the other day. Um, I know someone that is very haunted by roles that other people, including myself, get. And I feel so bad for this person because, um, for whatever reason, I'm free of that. I always have been. I kind of think part of it is my own weird spirituality where I do genuinely believe that if one thing, including movie that I told you I turned down that I said I probably should have, but the truth is I don't really feel I should have, because if I had done that, I might not have met Ted.
Well, yeah.
And then Kate and Alexis wouldn't be my stepdaughters. And I mean, all the ways that my life would be different are, impossible to imagine. So I am not haunted by I love other people's success. I love actors. I'm hoping to go to see something tonight simply because an actress I admire is supposed to be brilliant in it, and it will bring me joy to see her. And I'm sad for people that don't feel that. It's just, it's not a competitive sport. You're in it together.
We'll end with this one. They say that you should never meet your heroes, and I'm wondering if you have a story that either proves that saying right or wrong.
I think it's wrong. I met my hero, um, Paul McCartney last year, and he he is married to a real nice, fun, smart woman. He's modest and cool and kind, and I held out my hand to say hello, and he pulled me in a hug. I did almost my knees almost buckled, but that's neither here nor there, and, the two of them just radiated, like, fun and kindness and sanity, and I just that was crazy to me. I feel like that's an achievement to be that famous and to have all the goofballs like myself of the world that it was my first concert, the Beatles, in Houston, Texas, have to tell him that. And he was so kind, and I said, "Oh, sorry, to tell you that," and he said, "Oh, no." He goes, "I'd be the same way." And I kind of nodded, and then as Ted and I were leaving, I went, "But who would he be the same way about?"
Yeah, there is nobody else quite like that. Yeah.
Aren't you kind of right up there at the top? And yet his ego, he's managed to have that kindness and to have a family that he loves and sanity and, it's just that I think is quite he should be studied as someone, that is doing the impossible.
Well, Mary, you said earlier that you're not as sweet in real life as your reputation, but after this conversation, I don't believe you. So thank you very much for doing this and sharing so much.
May I just add that I have this sense of humor in terms of what makes me laugh of a 12-year-old boy, and everyone who knows me really knows me, knows that fact, and it's not sweet at all, but anyway, thank
Well, this movie, The Dink, is both sweet and very funny. It premieres Friday, July 24th on Apple TV. Mary Steenburgen, thank you so much for being here.
you too.
All right. Well, thank you again to Mary Steenburgen. That conversation was really fun. I think that she is actually as sweet as we think she is in real life, and is just pretending to be a raunchy, person with a 12-year-old sense of humor. But anyway, if you're enjoying this podcast, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Obsessed channel. You can see all of our episodes there. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the show. And you can also listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a rating and review there as well. Thank you to our producer, Rachel Passer, and we'll be back with an all-new episode of Obsessed the Podcast very soon.